Venters, I have not one, but two good stories to tell you. And if you're brand new to the show, we like to walk, and one of the best ways to walk every single day is to have something fun that you can chew on. And when I say that, I don't mean literally chewing on like food. Put that candy bar down. What we're talking about is chewing on a subject matter that we can all kind of weigh in on, so to speak. So if you have anything to say about these two stories, please share with us down in the comments. Guys, I want you to imagine what you would do if you found out that your son or daughter had a stalker. And on top of that, what would you do if you found out that that stalker had been arrested and released by the Dallas County court system 8 times? We have that scenario with a 23-year-old Plano man named Ian Smith in the Dallas, Texas area. He's been stalking and harassing multiple women from the SMU campus, and in case you're wondering, he's not even a student at SMU. This guy has been harassing and stalking the students over the past 3 years. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned, but he's only 23 years old. To be caught and released 8 times, if this guy was a fish, they would have to call him a cat, because apparently he has 9 lives. I want to read you some of the comments that people left on this video, because you got to remember, this video was only a minute or two, and it's from the news channel that I got it from, and I'll put that news channel up here on the screen. What's such a shame about the news is they've got multiple things that they have to talk about in the half-hour broadcast. So when you have a really good, chewy story like this, they're only able to throw a couple minutes at it, and it's kind of a shame. It kind of makes you wonder, maybe that's the reason that we don't take crime as seriously as we should, because every time we're told about it, it's in passing. And when you're talking about something in passing and you only hear 1 or 2 minutes of it, it goes in one ear and out the other. But there's one thing for sure that we know by examining the state of Texas. It's not just a blue dot thing. That's where I was wrong. This crime happened in Dallas, where I believe it's more of a red area. But again, I could be wrong, and this could just be another blue judge. But let's throw out blue, let's throw out red, and let's look at it for what it is. For some reason, these judges that go on TV and ask you to elect them to court, and that go through the process of getting elected, however that might be, because I am naive about it, they always promise us that they're going to protect us. When the sheriff is going up for election, he or she always promises that they're going to protect us. They always talk about this glowing record of taking criminals off the streets. But then when we examine things, we find out that it's not the truth. It can't be the truth. How does a guy get arrested 8 times? At what point do you have to say, this guy is not fixable, and every time you let him back out, you're literally just waiting for him to become the next Ted Bundy? Harassment leads to stalking. Stalking leads to kidnapping. Kidnapping leads to murders. So again, I don't know why people in Texas accept this. And I know for a fact that many of you Texans do not accept this. But anyway, let's hear what some of these comments said, and then maybe I'll weigh in. Of course I'll weigh in. At Walkaway, Renee 12 says, by allowing him to be released 8 times, it will take how many deaths before you put him in jail? See, this is what I don't understand about our lawmakers. There are some laws where it comes across as, well, duh. If you're letting this guy out 8 times, what I'd like to know is who's the judge signing the paperwork? Who's the judge signing the court order? Shouldn't he or she be put up to account? At what point do we have to start looking at our judges as being an accomplice to the crimes? And I don't know about you, but this isn't good for the city and it's not good for the state, and I'll tell you why. One of these days, this guy is going to take out one of his victims, and one of those victims' parents and family is going to end up suing the state for tens of millions of dollars, and they're going to bring up all 8 of these arrests as negligence on behalf of the system. And then who ends up paying that bill? We do. So instead of that money going out to put new cops on the street, putting a cop in every school, Dallas is going to end up paying hundreds of millions of dollars to these victims. It's just a matter of time. Tell me if you agree or disagree with me. The next person was at Keith Mahoney, 8698. It says some of those judges should be put in jail. See, here's the interesting thing. If your daughter brought home a man that she was dating and you found out that that man was a judge, God, that's something to be proud of. Hey, my daughter's dating a judge. Hey, my daughter's dating a lawyer. Hey, my daughter's dating the chief of police. If all these people are working in tandem to let these criminals in the system, take a little bit of bail and bond money from these people, and then they release it right back out, at what point do you say that sounds like a racket? That sounds like a money-making machine that's not designed to do anything but continuously make money from these bad guys. And I don't know about you, but if this guy's in jail 8 times, you know what that means? That means that whoever is paying his bond, it's probably the dude's parents, because you know this freakazoid doesn't have a girlfriend or a wife. So again, we should be talking to his parents. They should be shamed somewhat. Am I saying get them out in front of the public and public shame them? No, but I'm saying ideally, wouldn't that be great if people were embarrassed of the things they did? At what point do you have to say, man, quit bailing out your son. He's a menace to society and he's gonna do something bad. Maybe when people go before the judge and they say, please give clemency and leniency to my son or to my nephew or to my cousin, maybe what the judge and maybe what the court system needs to say is, okay, if you're willing to vouch on behalf of your son, then the next time he's up for prison time, we're going to give you a percentage of prison time too. And you know what that would do, boys and girls? That would create a situation where family members would quit vouching for these monsters. Now, all I can say is put yourself in these family situations. If your daughter was one of these victims from this guy, this would be something that you would be up in arms about. So don't poo-poo it just because it doesn't affect you. Because what doesn't affect us today, boys and girls, can very much affect us tomorrow. And I apologize for calling you boys and girls. That sounds kind of creepy. Forgive me. At General Tao, X29 says, if he's arrested 42 times, he'll face a $5 fine. You know, you're poking fun there. But what he's really screaming out to the world is, we're not getting justice. When you have a court system that is designed to protect people, and instead of protecting people, it's just running people through the system and collecting money at the same time, it really makes you wonder, do Dallas and Houston and the state of Texas care more about money than they do the victims of crimes? Because we already know it comes across like they care more about the criminal. So number 1 is the criminal, number 2 is the money, number 3 is the victim. At what point do we have to start holding judges accountable? And I know exactly how you can do it. You can bring up the judges that signed off on this guy being released. That's not considered a victory for coaches. That's considered a loss. They need to figure out how many people that they've been letting on the streets. Because here's the thing. If they can tell us in these presidential commercials that there's 80,000 criminals that have been released into our nation, then I think they can tell us how many criminals an individual judge has let out into the community. Can I get an amen on that? I'm serious. Can you write amen down in the comments? Thank you. If you love baseball, then you probably love things like stats and averages. Every one of these judges, everyone that's ever been a judge, has stats that we should be able to open up and investigate. And I just have a really bad feeling that almost every single judge has an atrociously bad record when it comes to wins and losses. Because every single criminal that we talk about on Walk Talk Vent is somebody that's in there for their 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th offense. And this guy having 8 just goes to show you that they are literally waiting for him to do something completely heinous. And even then, there's going to be a system that's trying to get him the least amount of punishment. It's sick. At Sean Anderson 5334 says, this dude is giving society every red flag necessary to lock him up for at least 5 years. Stop letting him go. Now here's the question I have for you, Sean. I agree with you, every red flag in the book. But where I don't agree with you is 5 years, because it seems like half of the prisons in this country have this setup that must be nice for the bad guy. It basically says, hey, every 2 days you're in jail, if you don't fight or cause disturbance, we're going to give you credit for 4 days, right? They have this good time policy. Now, I don't know if Texas is like this, but imagine putting this guy away for 5 years, and then you come to find out that 2 years later, he's back on the streets doing things. This guy's 23. This is his 8th time being arrested and let go. How about we go for 15 years? And how about we go for no more good time off? That is something that should be allowed for people that have nonviolent crimes. I would consider this to be a violent crime, although it doesn't sound like he's ever hit or hurt anybody. I would still consider this a violent crime because of the intent behind it. We already know what happens to famous people when they're stalked. Some of them end up losing their lives. And to absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt that this guy has some sort of mental problem, he's either not taking his medication or he's just got a seed of evil. And if you can look at the darkness behind his eyes, guys, that's an evil human being. You can just tell. At Kristen Tyndall 3075 says, what is it gonna take, ? Is it gonna take him hurting someone first? This is shameful. It is shameful, Kristen. The reason it's shameful is because at what point do we as a people say we don't want to live in a country where criminals are allowed to have every single luxury that the people are? The only people that get long-term punishment from this system is the victims. And that's all it takes, guys. We as a people have to start saying we want judges to be accountable. We need lawyers and politicians and upstarts to know that in the state of Texas especially, if you're willing to change the laws, making judges accountable, we can start to see where the real fraud is. And speaking of real fraud, the next story that I'm about to tell you gives you a little insight into how even the leaders of certain communities have to be tied into this fraud. So check this out. Now we're going to go from Dallas County back over to Harris County and the Houston area. Whenever there's anything wrong with that city, I want you guys to immediately take a look at the penal system. The penal system has judges that other YouTubers have applauded for the goofiest things, when in reality, these judges are constantly letting bad people into the community. But in case you're a resident of Houston, this next one has nothing to do with crime or heinous people. It has to do with that age-old problem we have in this world known as greed. 5 people have been charged by helping 200 unqualified, uncertified teachers get their certification in the state of Texas. District Attorney Kim Ogg says that Booker T. Washington, head basketball coach, Vincent, oh, that is a horrible time to spell horribly, huh? Booker T. Washington, head coach Vincent Grayson would help teachers that had failed their certification tests in the state of Texas. Upon failing once or twice, they would meet up with basketball coach Grayson and they would pay him thousands of dollars. Vincent Grayson would then have them show up to their test site to take their test, to check in. He would then have Booker T. Washington assistant principal Nicholas Newton take the test for them, and they would go from a failed teacher that wasn't quite up to par to all of a sudden they would be passing the test with flying colors. In case you're wondering, well, how much did basketball coach Grayson make from this operation? It's guesstimated that he made over $1 million. Today, they hit him with a $300,000 bond, which if you have to pay 10% of that, comes out to $30,000. But here's the problem. If I've already made $1 million and now you want me to pay $30,000, well, I'm going to be able to pay that to you. But of course, it's not going to come out of my money. It's going to come out of this dirty money that this guy has taken in. So it sounds to me like the state of Texas has had 200 teachers teaching in their classroom that aren't really up to par. So not only is he lining his pockets with money, and not only is assistant principal Nicholas Newton lining his pockets with the money, but you have 200 teachers that absolutely know that they didn't deserve their job in the classroom. And what I'd like to know is, out of those 200 teachers, because I don't think it happened just this year, this probably goes back years and years, how many of those teachers are getting annual raises and asking for stuff that they don't deserve? And I don't know about you, but if you're in a job illegally working with the public and working with students, you probably deserve some jail time yourself. If people are willing to do this, it just goes to show you that greed wins the day. Money is worth more than their integrity. All right, so now that we know that story, let's hear what some of the comments were on this video. You guys are always seeing me juggle my note cards, but when I saw these two stories this morning, I was like, God darn, those are both super interesting. By the way, before I read into these questions and comments that people left for this video, they were talking to somebody from the Texas Education Association, known as T, which is how people are supposed to get properly credentialed as teachers in the state of Texas. Well, anyway, they spoke to a representative, and she herself was a retired teacher with over 30 years in the classroom. And she was saying that this must be a bigger, deeper problem, because there's one problem with the whole scenario. When people go down to these testing sites, they're not supposed to have cell phones. They're supposed to show their ID. They're supposed to test with a promise that they're not trying to cheat. So the only way somebody could show their ID and start their test and then have some man take the test for them is if other people were involved. That's the only way I could see it as even being humanly possible. So either people looked the other way, or they actively knew something was going on and they chose to allow it. So there's probably more money that has been made. And by the way, it did say 5 arrests were being made. So that proves right there that it's beyond Coach Grayson and assistant principal Nicholas, whatever his name was. At Anna, the end note says, Anna Thine-Knots 4901 says, I want to see the list of teachers. Amen, Anna. I want to see the list of teachers, but you know what else I want to see? I want to see the judge that gave this guy a $300,000 bond. If some guy made $1 million off of this, and he knows he's going to be going into prison most likely. By the way, his sentence can be as little and lame as 2 years up to life. So what I want to know is, if you can get up to 2 years to life for stealing millions of bucks from the school system and from these teachers that didn't deserve to be there, then how much years do you get for actually hurting people? Judges out there in Texas, shouldn't you get more than 2 years and definitely something closer to life than what you've been giving these people, which is a whole bunch of nothing? I want to see that list of teachers, Anna, but I'd also like to see the list of judges and the list of the criminals that these people are letting out on the streets. I think we would all be very much appalled, and I think we would be talking about putting them in jail rather than re-electing them for another year on the bench. At Nat B. Funky, this is a complete failure in the school system. You know, it really is. I think what happens when you start to have teacher shortages and you start to have people that are greedy, I think all of a sudden bad things and chaos happen. And it seems like there's certain areas in the country where this stuff is just rampant. I think it would be good if we could have somebody, I don't know if it needs to be on the federal level, but there needs to be some sort of FBI equivalent within the state of Texas. You know, maybe it's the Rangers, right? Maybe they need to do some sort of investigating, and they need to find out and get out all the corruption in this system. This sounds like something that we would deal with in second and third world countries, doesn't it? I think it's embarrassing. And it seems to always be the same cast of characters. People that are in positions where they're responsible for things. How come they're not watched and scrutinized a little bit closer? You're telling me that it took 200 teachers before this thing was snuffed out? That means this guy has probably been making bank for many, many years now. I just can't believe people can't catch on to these things a little bit faster. So yeah, I agree with you, Nat. It's a complete failure in the school system. But what are we as people going to do about it? Probably nothing. At Nancy Garza, 6523 says, he will pay his bond from the dirty money he made, and the judge will gladly accept it. See, guys, here's the problem. We're starting to get to the point where it's not just me. And it hasn't been just me for a long time. I'm new to the game, and it really started while doing this channel, so I'm extremely new to the game. These people have been dealing with corruption and seeing these things on the news for years. The judges are getting to the point where people do not trust them. You know, there's a saying in the Bible, judge not, lest ye be judged. Okay, well then let's take that literally. We need to start looking at the record of each and every one of these judges. Jesse? Yeah, Bob? I've heard you talk about that a dozen times over the past month. Guys, we got to talk about these things, because otherwise it just becomes another bit of crap that gets swept under the rug. Why don't we have politicians talking about judges' accountability? Why don't we have an idea of what their win and loss record is? You can look up any coach in any major sports history, and you can literally Google what was their win-loss record, and that'll pop up on your screen within 5 seconds, right? If you have high-speed internet. Well, how come we can't do that with judges? Don't you think the win and loss record of a judge that lets criminals out into the community, isn't that slightly more important than Coach Landry's record as a Cowboy coach, right? Or Coach Martz's record as the new Cowboy coach? I mean, doesn't there come a point in time where we say, you know what? Some wins and losses are a little bit more important than the basketball court or the football field? At James 007BV says, I'd be willing to bet that this rabbit hole runs very, very deep. James, there's no way that it can't. You can't just get away with doing bad things unless there's people willing to turn a blind eye on it and let you do all the bad things that you want. And I think if we were realistic and honest with ourselves, we would have to say that this probably goes extremely deep, and there's probably a lot of people that really need to get more than just a fine. If you have enough money to cover a fine and you end up making more money than your fine ever was, well then aren't you being rewarded for bad behavior? These people need to be made an example of. Do I think that this Coach Grayson character, do I think that he should go away forever for this? No, this is not the equivalent of murder. It's not the equivalent of battering somebody to death or anything like that. But it's something where I think he should get no less than 10 or 15 years. And here's the thing. If you're going to give him 10 to 15 years, make him serve 10 to 15 years. None of this letting him get out in a year or two crap. That's what's so irritating. Imagine being in the city and all of a sudden you see this guy out and about and he still drives a new car because all they did was give him a fine, or they let him do a small little term and he's out and he still gets to spend his money. No, he needs to pay back the state. That's where the state should be making their money, off of criminals doing their time and paying their debt, not out of giving them small bonds. I think when you give somebody a $300,000 bond and they've already cleared $1 million, you're rewarding them. At CrinkleCut3790 says, hundreds of teachers. Don't you dare tell me nobody else knew this was going on. I threw in the don't you dare tell me. I agree with you. There are 200 plus teachers that know they don't belong in the classroom. What Texas should be saying is, hey, we know who each and every one of you are. What you need to do is you need to turn yourself in immediately. And for the people that turn themselves in immediately, maybe we give them a little clemency, a little forgiveness, you know? But if you're going to make us go through the hoops to find you, well, then you're not going to get as much forgiveness. You're going to have to do some jail time. Does anybody else think that that would be really cool? Give them the legitimate opportunity to turn themselves in. Let everybody know that we're going to find each and every one of you. You can either do the right thing and turn yourself in immediately. You remember when W told the people, he goes, get out of that country. I forget what country it was. What was it, Iraq? Well, it was after 9/11, Syria, I forget the country. But either way, you guys know what I'm saying. He's all, you have 24 hours to get out of there. We're coming after you, Saddam, or whatever. That's the type of situation we need. We need a situation where we say, you have 48 hours, you teachers, to turn yourself in. And if you don't turn yourself in addition to losing your job and getting a fine, you're going to have a felony on your record and you're not going to be able to work in any job that you really want to work in. As a matter of fact, if these teachers have been in the classroom, you can actually kind of see how they're doing. If they're actually kicking ass and doing well, maybe you some way, somehow find a way where they can pay their penalty and pay their fine and stay in the classroom. I know that sounds horrible, but we have such a teacher shortage. I could see them trying to do something with the successful teachers. But again, I might be wrong for saying that. Pretend like I didn't even say that. These people need to turn themselves in, and there needs to be punishments paid. I guess what I don't understand is if there ever will come a time where we get a little relief from this. Because it sounds to me like there is no relief from this. It sounds to me like we're just constantly going to be begging judges to actually do their job. And if you have to beg a judge to do his or her job, to me, I believe that's criminal. You shouldn't have to beg anybody. And how much you want to bet every one of these people probably gets an annual raise? I'm kind of sick of people getting annual raises for doing a subpar job. There came a time in the past where you would ask for a raise because you were a good employee doing impressive things. Now we have people that just feel like every year they deserve a raise. And a lot of times you'll find out that these judges and these teachers get annual increases in their wages. If you don't deserve an annual increase, quit accepting the annual raise. You don't deserve it. And for other teachers that do a good job, there should be a way to find out about that so that you get the raise. That's just my take on it. I'll see you guys tomorrow.